Males in the smell of misery, seedless and centipedes.
Uhuru Sasa, which means freedom now, and we have just completed our musical salute to Get Up, Stand Up, a song that was really started, I guess, in Long Beach with the group War. But joining us on the line is Akuno, who is the co-founder and the co-director of Cooperation Jackson. He is based in New Orleans, Louisiana, born and reared in Los Angeles, California. And we are wanted to talk to Kali about the passing of Assata Shakur in Havana, Cuba. And how? What are your thoughts on the passing of Assata Olabala Shakur? She had a Yoruba second name, right?
That's right. That's right. Well, my first thought, and just for the audience to know, she passed on the 25th of September. And my first thought when well, let me back up a little bit because I got word from a number of different, sources, but it wasn't definitive. Just folks hit me with some text messages and a couple of things, and it was like speaking of her in the past tense. Uh, and I really kind of ignored it. And it wasn't until late that night that I got some confirmation, like, no, that it was real and that she had passed. And my real first thought was I'm glad and thankful that these slave catchers, these enslavers, never got their hands on her again, and that she was able to live out her life, in the open air in Cuba, and was really appreciative, of the Cuban Revolution and the Cuban people for being such a gracious host and protecting her for that long period of time. Because I don't think folks are fully cognizant of the degree to which she was constantly hunted and pursued by the United States government with active kidnapping efforts that have been made over the years, and the kind of the most recent egregious act was Obama, as some of us like to call him, had upped the ante and the price on her head. And so I was just really thankful that she died on her own terms and she died, free in Cuba. That was my initial real thoughts on that. And just put it in the context of, what we are facing, Black folks and African folks are facing in the United States in the present time, was just thinking of and continue to think of, what lessons from her life and from the life of her comrades that she was close to, worked with, help liberate her. What are the things that we need to revisit, relearn to kind of move us forward in the kind of perilous times that we are facing? Both the good and the bad. We want to accentuate the positive, and definitely not repeat, the many shortcomings and failures that folks executed, so we can kind of move forward. So that was my initial kind of thoughts, and that's the kind of the train of thought that I'm moving forward with. Trying to teach a younger generation about her and the movement that she came from.
Let me state this, then I'll turn it over to Melinda. According to Miguel San Vicente, the co-owner of A Different Book List, the biggest selling book at A Different Book List is Assata's autobiography.
That's a good thing.
It outsells Malcolm X's autobiography.
No, that's a good thing. I don't know about outselling Malcolm per se in comparison.
I'm talking in this particular book at the bookstore.
Yeah. But I mean, part of that makes some sense, because one of the movement for Black Lives, as is known, in many respects, uh, about a decade ago, took a modified portion of a speech that she gave and turned it into a chant and an anthem. And folks have done well, at least from what I've seen in that decade, of calling that the Assata chant and invoking her name almost every time the chant is used. And that has really helped, I think, to give, kind of some energy and focus and purpose to a younger generation, but it also has kind of elevated her name and her status to a degree that I think is well deserved. And so I'm not surprised to hear that, and that is something much more known to a younger generation than say like Malcolm X. But it has the same effect as, Malcolm had, I would say, for your generation, that chant, how y'all, coming up, being born on the cusp of the tail end of the 1960s, just growing up here, by any means necessary, by any means necessary. Well, that's the same way that the chant, we have nothing to lose but our chains. Both of these have become rallying cries and kind of mottos borrowed from Fanon of their respective generations, and that's again a good thing.
Right. You're listening to Diasporic Music on Black Bar 96. Melinda.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the importance of Assata and, talking a little bit about, Black internationalism and Pan-African internationalism and what she brought to it. And what she would be saying, moving forward, moving into this fall into fascism right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, she was, to her dying day, always encouraging folks to resist. Uh, and I don't think in any form or fashion she would back off of that, in the face of the circumstances that folks are now confronting. She would definitely always encourage folks to continue organizing and to tell folks, that you have to learn how to organize under any and all circumstances. And, should they take away, the cell phone, should they take away the internet, none of those stop people from communicating and talking to each other face to face. And we have to remember, most of the for almost all, I would say, of the great revolutionary, experiments that our people and others have been able to execute were executed without digital technology, without cell phones, and people, using word of mouth, right, and one-on-one contact to educate, to organize, to mobilize people. None of these are cut off from us at the end of the day. And this is one of these kind of periods. I'm sure she would counsel that, don't become dependent upon the master's tools just because they may be easy and convenient. They have become great tools of recognizance and surveillance on their part. I mean, you got to just look at how ICE is tracking people and hunting them down, utilizing their cell phones and then triangulating the signals, the digital signals that are coming from their loved ones or from their children, etc., to track them down. And being in Cuba, uh, uh, I know that she would also impart that Cuba does not have the technological capacity, say, of the United States government by far. And yet, the United States government has not been able to break the Cuban Revolution despite countless efforts and the stranglehold with the blockade. Uh, They don't have all this digital this and digital that, but they were able to stop hundreds, of assassinations attempts. There was like 40, I think, documented 40 plus attempts on Castro alone, that they were able to that are known, at least known to us and to me and the public. And I'm sure it's probably more than that they diverted, based upon their intelligence gathering capabilities, which again did not fully, was not dependent upon a heavily technological surveillance and all this digital stuff that we have now, but just on good human intelligence. And that is a piece that I think she would deeply impart for us, given the circumstances that we are facing now. And the other piece, she would definitely encourage, knowing this from what little time was able to spend, with her in Cuba, in my trips there. She would definitely be encouraging everybody to look internationally for lessons, for connections, for inspirations. She was a keen Pan-Africanist and an internationalist, and would definitely always guide, when we brought folks over, which was mainly, young Black folks, would always definitely encourage us to look outside the confines of the United States, for knowledge, wisdom, skills, strategies, tactics, and was always conscious like, we couldn't necessarily replicate the conditions that would exist, say, in Cuba, or bringing up some more recent, so in Burkina Faso, or uh, uh, Ghana, or Senegal, or some of those places. But there are some general principles that you could always kind of use and try to apply to your own context. And so that was always something she was always keen to really try to impart upon us as we would come with questions and try to prod things. She would always come with a broad international view, but be very much grounded in, this would look different, say like in Jersey, or this would look different in New York, or this would look different in LA, but this is how, you can move it or apply it or experiment with it. She was very keen on that. And I think, going forward, we need to be keen on that and not limit our imaginations to, the limited experiences that we have in the North American context, and just use our, our creative genius, which our people have been great at, when push comes to shove, of making a way out of no way. And we're going to have to continue to do that.
Kali Akuno, let me ask you this. I was listening to a brother on the internet, and he was criticizing the Panthers. He was basically saying that Assata was criticizing the Panthers because the Panthers were reading Mao, and they weren't reading Garvey. And I remember growing up in Los Angeles, and the Black Panther Party. I guess the Black Panther Party was like the ANC in the sense that you had all the different tendencies in there. I know for a fact that Al Prentice Bunchy Carter, a student of Didon Kimathi, you had to take the Mau Mau pledge in order to join the Southern California chapter of the Black Panther Party. And don't you think that African people can read international European philosophers as well as our own African scholars, or is that possible?
You better read all of it. I mean, if they got stuff coming from Mars, I'm gonna read it. If it's gonna help me deal with my situation. I think the question is just how do you apply those different things, right, to your context? Because no place is exactly, the same.
Right.
LA is not Toronto. They have similarities, but they're not the same. It's definitely not New York. And just on the terrain of how how you would organize, how you would fight back. Just the terrain in Manhattan is nothing like what you would find in South Central LA, right? You'd have to move differently. You wouldn't have the same types of cover. You wouldn't have the same uh, uh, access to resources. Some in LA you'd have more of. In New York, you'd have some more. Maybe more places to hide in Manhattan, but you wouldn't have access to some of the natural resources in terms of, maybe food or things like that. So you got to apply the terrain. And on this question, I always go to, something I learned and have always taken heart from studying Evelyn Carter Cabral. And one of the critical lessons that he always imparted was, they sent a lot of their cadres early on to China, to study, the art of guerrilla warfare. And, the particular units that they had trained them in how to fight in hilly and mountainous areas. Well, one thing when they came home, they kind of quickly realized we ain't got no mountains, right? So some of that ain't is just not going to work. It's not practical in our situation. And what they didn't use their own creativity and innovation applied to their context. Utilizing the broad range of access of human knowledge to different military strategies and tactics, and utilizing the dialectical method innovated from Marx and his numerous students all over the world. And he came up with the formula that our people are our mountains, right? That we are going to have to rely upon our people to, shield us, to guide us, to arm us, to feed us, and then how we build relations with our people relative to engaging in the war for national liberation. That was going to have to guide them in terms of how they develop their strategies and tactics. So it wasn't like it was a waste of time to go to China and learn from the Chinese. They just had to figure out in their own context, how to apply it, what they had learned, because the Chinese it clearly was successful, so they wanted to learn from that success and build upon it. And thankfully, not being dogmatic, they figured out how to apply it in their own context, and then went on to teach others in the Lusophone, i.e., the Portuguese-speaking, countries on the African continent, how to apply those lessons, which we saw, and them exchanging with each other. There was always a multiple-way street, but you wouldn't have the success that you had in Guinea-Bissau, Cape Verde, Zimbabwe, truth be told, Angola, or Mozambique without that level of exchange. And all of them, you know, they relied upon studying, the movements in their own context, right? So uh, folks knew about Chimaranga in Mozambique and clearly had studied that. There's some writings from Cabral where they had studied, the works of I'm forgetting Touré's grandfather, his name, but
Samori.
Samori, Samori. So to go back to that analogy, that would be akin to us studying Garvey, right? And so, uh, I'm gonna study Garvey, right? I'm gonna study Malcolm. I'm gonna study Paul. I'm gonna study Mao. I'm gonna study Tito. I'm gonna study all of them, and everybody in between, even some of our enemies. Uh, you know, uh, 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 I've studied von Clausewitz for hours on end. And for those of you who don't know, that's the this whole notion. He comes from the German, i.e., via the what were they called in the whole Hollering crew that used to run the Prussian Empire, right? And he did that whole piece on war, where it said that politics was war by other means, right? And all those different things. Study that on end and utilize it as creatively as I can to just figure out how to think about setting up both offensive strategies and tactics in the context of a non-military engagement, but understanding that my enemy, i.e., the forces of capital and the United States government, will and do deploy all of their brutal, machinery and tactics on us, and we have to figure out how to work around that. But you try to draw upon the knowledge, all the knowledge that's applicable, that might help you. It shouldn't just be limited to folks just within our own history, cultures, or tradition. If we want to win, we need to study all those things, and draw upon the whole breadth of human knowledge, not just a little corner that we come from.
Let me say this before I turn it over to Melinda. I remember reading a speech that Amilcar Cabral made in Tanzania, 1965, where he called on the there was a meeting between the liberation movement in Angola, Mozambique, and Guinea-Bissau, and he was calling on them to support our brothers and sisters who are fighting in the streets of Los Angeles, California. I never forget, that was 1965, but I'll turn it over to Melinda now.
Yeah, we haven't spoken to you in a while. So what's going on with Cooperation Jackson? What do you have upcoming?
Upcoming is surviving. To put it bluntly, some of our sister organizations have been placed upon, this CRC group, the top 10 groups who are supposedly, endorsing and promoting and funding anti-American activities. That's what I'm gonna call it on this in these airwaves. And they're just our enemies, and it ain't just Trump. As you all know from the Uhuru movement, right? That was a bogus case that got basically kind of trumped up from being surveilled during the Obama administration. And some would argue, I would, that part of it had to do with the very principled opposition, that the Uhuru movement placed, against Obama, from the beginning, really coming with some of the most acute clarity I think the Black Liberation Movement had, and then trumped up those bogus charges against O'Malley and others in the movement. So it's not a stranger that y'all are not a stranger to this kind of piece when I'm saying survival, but you don't just survive to kind of go into a shell. You got to keep doing the work and use that attack to try to educate the people as much as possible. So we try to position ourselves to be effective in that regard, understanding that the bourgeois kind of safeguards that have existed with the so-called separation of powers, that the MAGA movement basically has kind of obliterated that. So even some of the thinking of what the courts might intervene here, even though there's a political attack maybe from the executive, they are pretty much in line at the end of the day. And even though there's some uh, resistance being mounted by some of these federal judges, right now, the Supreme Court at the end of the day, it's got Trump's back, and and he's got theirs. So we're just trying to get prepared for some eventualities of how do we survive, how do we reposition ourselves for a long, protracted struggle, since they really are trying to, ensure, the dying embers of their empire, because the American empire is clearly in contraction, is clearly in retreat, and like a wounded animal, it's becoming more dangerous, as it sees its power waning and declining. And because of their myopic white supremacist views that do not allow them and won't allow them to kind of share in the bounty of the earth with anybody, they're trying to drive us all to the brink of war. So, we're doing our regular work, plugging along on that, continue to try to build the co-ops, build the solidarity economy, build the capacity of our people, as best we can with all the struggles on that with, all the food and mutual aid work. We've been trying to, broaden our message out. We're doing this Build and Fight educational series that we've been doing since February, to really pull that message out there to try to get people to organize autonomously to be able to be in a position to fight back both in the short, immediate, and long term. So definitely want to encourage folks to check out, that. We have our next series on that, which is about organizing towards a general strike. That's going to be on Tuesday, October 14th. And we've tried to, truth be told, pan some of this out because it was our analysis that the United States was headed towards fascism and civil war well over a decade ago. We started putting that out. Folks want to check our record is there and try to design our program to meet the moment. We haven't done everything that we hope to accomplish in our little decade and some change of being, on the ground existing. There's a lot more I wish we had in place, but there's the fundamentals for us to be able to kind of execute it, and we're trying to impart that knowledge and that perspective on to others. So I would say the main thing is folks listening, who want to check us out on that series, and you can find, the previous was it 8 shows on our YouTube page, which is Jackson Rising. You can check that out, and then, like I said, follow us on the 14th for update. And we're trying to do this in preparation of supporting this mass call, for a mass strike on Saturday, October 18th. So I definitely want to encourage everyone to do that, and us and a force that we've helped to galvanize called the People's Network for Land Liberation. We're going to be endorsing that in this coming week publicly and encouraging folks to do that, but to be programmatically to look at instituting this kind of build and fight peace as a long-term means to fight back, but also to project towards the end game of pushing for broad economic democracy within the U.S. empire. As the capital regime continues to kind of crumble and fold in on itself with overplaying their hand around AI and kind of constrangling, the global economy, but definitely the U.S. economy with this overreach around tariffs, that Trump is trying to execute, just extort the rest of the world to pay tribute to him and to the United States economy, which ain't gonna work at the end of the day. Uh, but it will cause some damage and some pain to a lot of our people, as the prices go up, as there's shortages on different things, and so, that piece around how we've been building the mutual aid, organizing mutual aid, preparing to food security towards food sovereignty, broad worker civil organization, all these different things combined give us the ability to fight back, push back, and come out in a transformative way on the end is what we try to project. So that's what we doing. For anybody who's interested, and we encourage folks to take this up and apply it in your area, however best suits your space, time, and conditions.
We've basically run out of time, but I have a short. Could you answer this question briefly? I know you had a Yoruba wedding, and I know Assata was is into
Practice,
culture.
yeah.
What do you think about her position on culture in terms of the importance of hip hop and the blues?
Oh, I mean, you got to draw on the reservoir of your people's creativity and their energy and animals, right? The things that all the knowledge and wisdom that is comes in the blues and all that, you got to draw upon that. And the things that motivate folks that come from that create hip hop, you got to draw upon that. So her and the Honda, I think, were visionary, and seeing and trying to
Honda
preserve
was. He was
the Honda
Honda.
Aria Doom, yeah, and trying to preserve the revolutionary potential of hip hop music, right? And in the 1990s, when kind of the so-called gangster rap and the deep misogyny that was being promoted, in hip hop, through the companies, not necessarily from our community and the artists, but what they were trying to direct it, there had to be an intervening force in order to do that. So them calling for Black August hip hop and combining the Black August, tradition of resistance and promoting that. That was a substantive contribution that should not be downplayed. That Nehanda and Assata, I think, gifted us with, and was fortunate enough, in my time with the Malcolm X grassroots movement to be a part of really uplifting and making that Black August, more known throughout the Black liberation movement in the Black community to where it is now, becoming pretty ubiquitous, at least in the United States. Is something, its meaning sometimes is lost, but it's getting out there. And, we got to definitely thank them two sisters for seeing that and pushing it and promoting that and uplifting that as part of their legacy.
All right. We would like to thank you, and we will stay in contact with you. Anything you would like to add, Melinda?
No, thanks for coming on, and hopefully we'll have you on sooner than later again.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Uhuru.
Uhuru. And stay tuned for T in Providence, and the Jazz Zone is going to be talking about Malcolm Jamal Warner. And make sure to come back and check out Dr. Gerald Horn and the Horn Report.